International topics explored by speakers from near and far. That's the focus of the World Affairs Council of Western Massachusetts. Krejsa of the Center for New American Security and Bill Scher, Politico Magazine contributing editor, spoke last night about the United States' foreign and domestic policy. But first, they stopped by Connecting Point. In February, Krejsa wrote a report titled Heartland Security, How Global Engagement Once Fueled the American Middle Class and Can Again, which I asked him about in the studio.
I think that in the past couple of years in particular, there have been a lot of questions raised among the American electorate and in political discourse about what traditional American foreign policy actually has to offer everyday Americans. And I think that that question has not been adequately answered, particularly in recent years, where the benefits of global leadership by the United States in a rules-based order with global economic engagement has paid off tremendously for the American people for the decades after World War II, but is less tangibly so now.
Well, and I would submit, and you point this out in your report as well, a small sector, right? Like it looked at white men predominantly who benefit from this, and maybe now catch up or exclusionary terms for other folks. Bill, let me bring you into the conversation here. So the title at the World Affairs Council where you two both spoke was Heartland Security, How Global Engagement Once Fueled the American Middle Class and Can Again. So Heartland Security, is that a play on Homeland Security? We so often hear that phrase these days.
Well, after 2016, I think the country was very startled to see how Donald Trump blew apart the so-called blue wall of the industrial Midwest. Even after Barack Obama's presidency got America out of the economic ditch, recovered from the crash of 2008, but not evenly, not robustly in certain areas. And it raised the question, which party is the party of the heartland, of the working class? Which party, is it based on economic policies, or is it based on racial and cultural resentment, or some hybrid of the two? And there are people on the left that wanted to see more economic populism, a rejection of the so-called free trade regime, and that Donald Trump was seen as closer to that than Hillary Clinton. But now Trump is, pressing the gas pedal on that, launching very crude trade wars. And we don't know how the country writ large is going to react to that. If the working class themselves is impressed, we see conflicting data. You go to the Iron Range in Minnesota, you're going to hear a lot of love for the steel tariffs. You go to a soybean farmer in Iowa, not so much.
Right, exactly.
And we don't know how this is going to shake out, how it's going to realign the two parties completely after the Trump presidency.
Yeah, kind of too soon to tell at this point. Interestingly, I want to quote something. It said, you said in the report, the most important asset in the United States economic arsenal was its human capital. Is that no longer the case?
I think that we are not maximizing the benefits of our human capital in the way that we could. In the decades after World War II, we engaged in a mass secondary education push and a higher education push. We had the best educated workforce in the world in those decades after World War II, and it helped us weather the disruptions that came from those first waves of globalization. But more than weather the disruptions, we were able to capitalize on them. Having strong human capital, having a labor-friendly policy environment, and strong commitments to the tools of innovation, scientific research, investments in long-term training and capital building, those kinds of tools allowed our workforce to stabilize themselves in a very fast-changing global economy and enjoy a meteoric rise in their standards of living and middle-class incomes.
But I could hear some people listening to this and say, yes, it's important that we bolster people, help them strengthen their education and opportunity to such, but what's to be said for pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and sort of getting things done that way? What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, that's sort of the classic, liberal-conservative divide. Donald Trump didn't run on that. He didn't run on, you got to get yourself up by your bootstraps. He ran on the Democrats in power did not help you, I will. They didn't bring back the jobs, the manufacturing jobs, the coal jobs, the steel jobs, I will. And I alone can't fix it. So it was a break from traditional conservatism. So you actually don't have either party right now articulating what you just articulated. It's now a debate over who is going to make government work best for you. And we have a trial run of policies, which are, I mean, it's only been not even 2 years, and the trade war aspect of it is relatively new. I don't know how the Democratic Party is going to react to that. You see some criticizing that even if Democrats are sympathetic to a tougher trade policy, Trump's doing it wrong. Trump's not executing it in a smart way. You may disagree. I don't know if there's going to be a Democrat who is going to fully criticize Trump and say, you know what, this nationalism is fundamentally wrong. We need to get back to internationalism. We need to reconnect with the global community in a way that will benefit the heartland. And I think it's what your report is asking people to take more seriously. I don't know if there are going to be Democratic candidates who are going to take your baton and run with it.
What do you think?
I think that the eventual solution is going to be complicated. I don't think we should lionize the world order before 2016 as something that was perfect and that worked for everybody, because it didn't. But we had developed the tools that allowed it to work for most people, and we let those tools atrophy and fall away. And I think that in many ways, the Trump administration's instincts, particularly on, say, China, are in the right place. They know that China has engaged in bad economic behavior and is not a fair competitor. But their trade war is kind of like trying to treat cancer with a sledgehammer. It might feel satisfying, the prospect of it might feel satisfying.
Getting something done.
Indeed, but you actually need to engage in a more nuanced, long-term, careful, and systematic plan to be able to beat that without hurting yourself.
Yeah, in your report, you outlined sort of a three-point plan, if I can sort of synthesize the information. And you said, to sort of preserve the United States status on the world stage, here's what you put out there. Upskill American workers, incentivize long-term investments in both public and private sectors, and promote workforce dynamism. On that incentivize long-term investments, how do you even define that at this point? Because I feel like the national attention span sometimes is in the range of this.
Absolutely. Well, I think that something we have to keep in mind is that the economy doesn't work in some sort of natural or inevitable way. That it works because we have fashioned a policy environment for it to work in a certain way. The invisible hand of markets is a force, but it's not something that's perfect or can't be channeled in more productive directions. We have a tax code that incentivizes lots of different behaviors. We could incentivize companies to invest in the long-term training of their workforces, provide them a tax break not only for investing in physical capital, but also human capital. There are some Democrats proposing a concept called co-determination, where a certain proportion of a large company's board of directors would be elected from their workforce. And so you would have different incentives in addition to quarterly shareholder results.
Interesting. So I point people to the report if they haven't read it yet. And it occurred to me as I was reading through it. So here we are, as you point out, the new American century is over, you assert in it. But so then what's been happening while the United States has been sleeping, unraveling, however you want to phrase it? What do you think? What's happened on the global stage?
Well, I don't think, if this is not the American century, the 21st century, I don't think we know if it's China's century or Russia's century or the European Union century, or maybe it will be the American century. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. And I think the rest of the world is still disoriented by the Trump presidency, doesn't know if it means a permanent shift by America to retreat from the global stage, or is this some weird aberration that's going to be corrected in 2 years' time? And I would like to see in 2020 a big debate between the two parties over what that course for America should be. Depending on who the Democratic nominee is going to be, will determine whether we actually get that debate or not.
Any final thoughts?
I think that the American century as we knew it has come to an end, the traditional tools and forces that made it so, but I don't think by any means it is over. I think if we update those tools for the modern era and refine the approach we have to foreign policy, the 21st century can be another one.